Hi there, my name is Rick Ragoza, and here we are at another session of Mastering the Guitar with Community 10. I want to tell you right now that you can mail in at Box 369, Community 10, label it Mastering the Guitar, and if you have any questions or inquiries, things that we can eventually open up a spot on one of the shows to answer questions and certain things, whatever it might be, okay, your basic feedback, as well as there'll be paperwork available of all the chords that are written down and used in the series, as well as the shapes and the scales and everything else, so that you'll have the working copies. The one thing that you might feel that you're missing right now is actually having something to look at in front of you. And so we've taken care of that. Just mail in and we'll deal with you and send you back what you need to know, and we'll take it from there. Okay? Today what I'd like to look at is, it's important that to some degree we're all tuned and we're all in the same frame, and it's hard to get a reference. One thing I can tell is your fridge at 60 cycles probably vibrates at a level around a B flat, okay, which is the 6th fret on the top string. So if you can hear the cycle that your fridge is humming at, the 6th fret top string is around a B flat, okay? But if you don't have references like that, there's certain songs that you can play. I know that Night Prowler, for example, by AC/DC, the last song on the Highway to Hell album, okay, which is way out there for some of you guys who might still have that around, certain songs, the last one is the key of A, okay? So some of these songs you can actually play, all right? And in fact, if you don't have the album, don't rush out and get it. It's old news. There's other songs. If you want to request them, I'll make a list of some of these and we can send them to you so that you know that certain music that you have at home can give you the reference to tune your instrument. An important thing about having the reference for tuning is that if you've got middle C, the strings are designed to operate at certain levels that way within, you know, some people might tune down a little bit or tune up a bit, but around that range, because if you don't have them at that range, you'll find you'll be popping strings, okay? So this time, I'm tuned to an A440, okay, which means that this string, the A string, at the diameter that it's at, vibrates at 440 cycles per second, okay? So when you hear that, or the harmonic, all right, 440 times a second, that's vibrating. Anything that will vibrate at that ratio will give you an A sound, okay? Your vocal cords, your vocal cords, 440 cycles per second, you'll produce an A note, all right? And it's important to get used to this. Sing along with your guitar when you're playing the major scales. Or do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, okay? First, let's get you tuned. So the top string is an E note, and do what you can to tune the top string that sounds the same here. If you're a total rookie and this is all new and rushing you out how to hold the thing and start tuning these things, hum the note first so that you can hear it in your head. If you have to cover one ear, okay? Get the range that it's in so that you can at least be close, okay? That's an E. Now the next string, there's our A. The next string, okay, it's a D. Next string's a G. Hum along with Herman, okay? B. And all you baritones out there, get ready. There's high E, okay? So to some degree, that should keep you happy, all right? As far as elaborating a little bit, it's a relatively crude method, but it is universal, so we'll look into it for a minute here. It's the 5th fret theory, okay? So when your top string, E, is tuned, and that's our reference point, okay? By placing a stopped finger on the 5th fret of that string, the next string should sound the same. Okay? And even if your guitar is acoustic, whatever you might have, you should feel that they're vibrating the same. If they're not the same, like listen to this. You get a warbling or a kind of like a wow and flutter effect. But when they're in tune, it's nice and smooth. The playing is smooth, okay? So the 5th fret then goes to the next string, the 5th string, 5th fret, and that will be the same as your D string or the 4th string open. Okay? So again, as you get better with this in the sounds, you become, of course, better at tuning. So whatever level you're at, remember not to crank the strings. Turn them down and slowly go up, okay? The 5th fret 5th string, or 5th fret 4th string, is the same as the 3rd string. Okay? The only variation is when we're on the 3rd string, we go to the 4th fret, and that gives us our B, which is the 2nd string open, okay? And then, between the 2nd and the 1st string, we go back to the 5th fret. And those two should sound the same, okay? So hopefully you're just, you know, copying these programs or recording them, and by that you can just play them back and get this information down, play it until you memorize it, because that's a basic tuning. Eventually we'll get into all this harmonic stuff, all right? But there's time for that, all right? There's no hurry for that. So now that we're tuned, the one thing I want to show you today is basically we're going to be looking at the key of A today, okay? So there's some neat things that we can do in the key of A, but the first step is just jumping right into the format of the programs have been to start with a finger exercise and to basically, to some degree, spend a few minutes getting your fingers warmed up. I want to reaffirm and establish a habit of practice, and that the important thing is that before you do anything, you warm up, okay? Open your fingers, close them, squeeze, open your fingers, stretch them out, okay? Close them. Important to lay your fingers, you know, side by side, bending the middle phalanges, okay? This is just 1, 2, 3, 4. You can do sets, 1, 3, 2, 4. Okay, whatever turns you on, or you can go 1, 2, and 3, 4. All right? Just to start getting coordination in your fingers, okay? Keeping them out, slowly bring them in. Okay, it's very important. Your fingers and your arms, you know, they have muscles and they need to be warmed up. This is a great exercise, okay? If you're applying some of this data to piano playing, there's a drill where you hold your hands like this and you do little circles with each of the fingers, okay, trying not to move any of the other fingers, okay? And some of this stuff you might want to do while you're alone because it looks kind of silly and people think maybe you lost it. But I've been doing this for years, and I can tell you it's true. I've lost it. But the important thing is it's given me the dexterity to play this instrument, and it's been able to keep my chops up, keep the muscles toned when I'm away from the instrument, and I can get a full workout on the guitar without having a guitar by doing some basic drills, okay? Some of you have seen this one before where you're bending the first, as you straighten the first one, you bend 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in, okay? And the 2nd finger, as you straighten 2, you got 1, 3, and 4, okay? 3, as you straighten 3, you bend 1, 2, and 4 in, okay? So these basic, same thing with 4, you straighten 4, you bend 1, 2, and 3 in, okay? So it's important to warm up your hands. Treat them like muscles, especially if you're going to be playing, like if you're making a habit of playing, then you need to condition your muscles, because some of you might have noticed already, you play 20 minutes and your hands are just tired. Or some of you might even be playing less, and you just don't overstress your muscles, because there was a time there where I was so fanatic I used to play for, my warm-up was 2 hours. But there's times I overdid it. My arms were so sore I just couldn't play. There was a time for 2 weeks I just literally could barely make a fist because I overstressed the muscles. You don't want to do that. That's stupid. I was trying to do something positive, and it was just really dumb. So I've learned that practice sessions shouldn't exist and consist more of 10 minutes. Practice 5 minutes but 10 minutes is maximum. Get your hands, warm up, apply data to it, basic shape or whatever you're learning, then rest and build up a vocabulary. So once I'm warm now, I can play for hours. But it took years to get at a level where the muscles have the access to the blood, and still now, if I don't warm up properly, it doesn't take long before there's kinks, the limit. I can just feel that there's just stiff, okay? So you want to keep it loose, and you want to warm up. You want to just warm up your muscles, okay? All the stuff with the arms beside, turning the wrists, okay? Forward, turning the wrists, okay? Over your head, turning the wrists, all right? Yay! Hi, Mom. All this kind of stuff is good for you, all right? You need to do this. It's very important because holding this instrument and just everything involved is demanding on the body, from the posture. You don't want to be leaning over, crunched over. You get a bad back in no time, okay? So you want to be natural at it, and you want to have your muscles pumped up so they're ready to go. And really, it's surprising how the minimal effort it takes to make sounds, but how fast you can get fatigued just by moving these little muscles, because there's a lot of little muscles involved, so you want to keep them strengthened, okay? Now, there's a scale that happens to be my favorite scale, okay? And it's written on the sheets that'll be available for those of you who mail in and ask for this. And it's called the chromatic scale. And the chromatic scale is based off of the arrangement of this instrument because it's a half-step progression scale. It has literally no restrictions because it plays every note that exists one after another, okay? Right from the open note. That was the E chromatic scale because I started with an E and I ended with an E. Okay? This is what I call the extended chromatic scale. Okay, so that's 4 octaves on this instrument. And what that was is every note that exists on this instrument. And I took the approach in the early days, you know, some 20 years ago, that if I could play every note on this instrument, then it would simply be a matter of choice. And it's amazing how much logic was in that decision and wherever it came from. I thank the good Lord for some of this stuff, because if it wasn't common sense and applied common sense at the time, it certainly became a very logical approach. If I can play every note, okay, then after, is simply selecting notes from that, all right? So I want to share that with you today. There's a number of ways of playing this. I'm going to show you the simplest way first, okay? What you need to know then, the preliminary information is the basic exercise number 1, okay? And we're going to apply a technique, a new technique today that we haven't looked at in this series yet, and it's called basically a shifting, okay? And what that means is it allows us to shift out of a position and then shift back into that position for the sake of posture and just knowing where we're at, okay? So for now we could start, say, on the 5th fret. Actually, based on the screen here, I'm going to start on the 3rd fret so you can see my whole hand, okay? So what we do at this starting point is play out the 4, I call it, or I refer to it as, all right? So play out the 4. That means you have 4 fingers, play them out, one after another, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, what is required of you to move to the next position is this. Leave at least one finger on as a guide finger. You need to always have a guide finger because that tells you where you are and helps secure you. You're going to stay there, all right? Because you'll find, if you haven't already, if you don't watch, you'll be all over the place. And that might be fine when you're by yourself in the living room, but if you're playing with somebody and you start changing keys and playing all these tension notes, it ain't going to work. They're not going to ask you back, okay? So always have a guide finger. It's a very good and very positive habit to have. So you play out your 4, and then what I'm going to do here is I drop down to the next string back a fret, okay? And then I shift up back into the 3rd position that I'm in, and then play out the 4 again. Okay, so watch this again. Okay, now that technique of shifting, playing, but you notice these fingers haven't changed from the position they're in, okay? They're just happy to be where they are, and if this finger wants to play out of position, he can, and if he wants to come back, he can. Gives you freedom of movement, and it's at the moment here, I'm not lost. I know where I'm at, and I'm going to stay there, okay? So we play out the 4, shift, play out the 4, shift, okay? Now, the only exception that takes place here is we shift on the 3rd, we stay, 1, 2, 3, 4, between the third and the second string, there's no shifting. Okay? And then we shift on the first string. Okay, now let's try that again. Okay? Now how to go back is we go like this. We play out the 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, this is why we need this is a good example of why you need guide fingers, okay? Because we play out the 4, well, I can't have these fingers on, so I keep my first one on because that keeps me in position. And then you'll notice the fourth finger will stretch out of position, 1 fret, okay, see that? And then into position, play out the 4. Now remember, the second and third string, there's no shifting, they stay the same. Shift, back into position, stay in position. Then the top 3 strings, we use the shift again. Okay, so forward and back.